Sign up, become a misfit, those who don't fit. Society gives us a skip, We ain't about that mainstream. That what's popular ain't true. What's true ain't popular. Flip, miss Swiss in the house. We come through it with some sharp. We cut right through. We don't follow trends. We got our own groove. Breaking the mold, making the move. We ain't about that fake facade and switch. We stand proud in our eye. We see through the tricks and love to defy society standards. We're gonna fly. Hey, yeah, yeah, yeah. One face of sadness.
What up, fam? Welcome to the show. Interesting show tonight. And if you want to support the stream, the link is pinned in the chat as well as in the description. 𝐭𝐬.com/whatsit. And cool, we'll jump right into it. Sorry for the delay, my fault per usual. Every time I'm getting ready to go live, something messes up. I had to uninstall Discord last minute, but we are here. So I ask everyone to be respectful to the guest. It's like a guest in our house. So every time I say that, people don't listen. It's really weird. But anyway, I would appreciate it. And cool. Without further ado, we'll just go ahead and bring him on. So we have a flat earth discussion tonight with Patrick Riley. And I met him through X, formerly known as Twitter. So cool. How's it going, brother? Nice. Yeah, very cool, man. Yeah, my name is Austin Whitsitt. So Whitsitt is my real name, my last name, but cool. So you said your friend is a flat earther. Like, how long have you known about this idea?
About 6 to 8 years ago, and at first, to be honest, I thought it was a joke, and then I was like, oh, it's a meme thing, and then people started taking it seriously, and I was like, oh, hey, people really see this, and I never really took it to heart.
Yeah, sorry, he was muted. I had to fix it.
Okay, yeah, my.
There's someone always telling you that they can't hear you. Sorry, that's my bad. I had the audio muted on accident.
Yeah, no worries. So so when I met one of my friends, really my best friend now, he told me eventually that he was into flat Earth theory, and that he'd also been in the military, and he did some things, and he kind of subscribed to that theory, and it was really something he wanted to be, but just that he looked at a lot of research and he couldn't get around it. So I started really considering it, and here we are.
Nice. And yeah, sorry about that. To tell them what you said before I realized that I had you deafened or muted. But basically, you had a friend who was a flat earther, and then you saw me on InfoWars. He said you should debate that guy, and here we are. Ideas to be like a friendly discussion. I want to give you a chance to kind of tell everybody like kind of who you are, what you do, or anything like that. If you want to do that before we get started.
Yeah, sure. So my background, I am by no means a government shill or any of those things, but I do have a background in the military. Before that, I joined at 17. I was homeless from 12 to 17, joined the Army, deployed to Iraq in 2009 as a combat medic, got blown up, and part of my experience was that I had a TBI that came with acquired savant syndrome. So basically the neuroplasticity in my brain caused me to become a little bit smarter than I used to be. And I started seeing systems. I came back from Iraq. I started building cars from the frame up with no formal training in it whatsoever. And of course, in medicine, I was doing anatomy and physiology, and things just kind of came natural to me. And eventually I was in finance. And along the way, I started inventing and trying to solve problems. And some of those inventions I am bringing to bear very soon here. Actually, June 8th, I'll be doing a reveal of 4 different technologies at the Quantum Summit in Cape Canaveral. And some of those technologies involve space-based applications. So it would be really inconvenient for me, of course, if space isn't there. And I really started to consider it from my best friend, but so I also have a background in forensic psychology, MBA from Syracuse, as well as in the latter part of my career, I was with civil affairs and psyops with the military as a Whiskey 1. I got out because of the vaccine mandate, and that's why I gave up a 16-year career in the Army. And I launched my first company, which was Reaper Financial. So I've built an entire economic system and now 7 different companies on the blockchain. And I ran for president last year and closed it out early in September of last year, as it became apparent that those gates were not open to me. I'm very much removed from kind of the mainstream thinking. Now, in regards to where I actually stand on flat Earth and globe Earth, and I want to be real clear on this, I do have a understanding of consciousness based in my background with my TBI, but also with psychology, and I'm looking to do my doctoral thesis on universal consciousness, which essentially is that we are channeling our consciousness from the universe. It is not contained within your body, which is observable in double slit experiment, whether light is a wave or a particle. It's observable based on observation of atoms and multiple other instances of human history, such as Phineas Gage, so on and so forth. So with that, I do think that our human consciousness shapes reality. And from that, I can say that on a quantum physics level, that if we're looking at Schrodinger's cat, whether it's alive or dead in the box, Earth is both flat and round simultaneously until it is irrefutably proven to the majority of our conscious selves that it is one or the other. And that is kind of the angle from which I look at it. And I, of course, have my doubts about flat Earth. I also have my doubts about the globe. I am not a supporter of NASA. I'm not a supporter of Einstein. I think both are completely bogus and fraudulent, and so I think it'll be a great discussion.
Nice, man. That's a crazy story about the neuroplasticity thing, man. That's very fascinating. I thank you for your service. I don't support most of anything that our military does. My father was in the military and served in Desert Storm. I have respect for the idea, in principle. I don't support pretty much anything we do, and I'm sure you may know, once you look into it, almost all of it's completely crafted and totally immoral, effectively. But I certainly can see that we disagree on quite a few things. I went down quite a few rabbit holes, right? And so there are a few trigger words I heard. So obviously, music to my ear is that like Einstein was fraudulent. And we can get into some of those specifics because I think the implications of that are very significant. But when it comes to, like it being flat and round simultaneously, a quarter is a flat and round simultaneously, so it could be a circle. That's a plane. But as to a sphere or flat, I don't necessarily vibe with that, right? I think there is an objective reality, and obviously our understanding of it goes through a subjective lens, and we're trying to figure it out. But I am a strong proponent of absolute truth. And I won't go too far into like the double slit. Light can't be a wave and particle at the same time. It's a paradox. That's there are no paradoxical dualities in nature, and really it's just a wave. I would say. I say it is just the ether being disturbed, and then it has isolated interactions, and we call that a particle. And specifically the photons, where the oscillating electric and magnetic fields intersect, and it's an event. An intersection, and then we like to count everything and call them particles and blah blah blah. Those are very deep conversations, as you know, trying to discuss what light is. We could be here for 5 hours. I do think that this whole conversation can kind of be boiled down into 2 primary components, right? And it's the idea is is the Earth moving? And then is the Earth curving, right? Like, is it a sphere? And they're not mutually exclusive. You know, you'll be hard pressed to kind of find anyone that thinks the Earth's a plane where the Earth is moving, but there are, believe it or not, some people that think that. So I will let you kind of choose where you think you would want to go first. I think the implications of Einstein being incorrect are significant in terms of if the Earth is moving. And so, I would like us to iron out maybe some of our differences in understanding of a lot of this, because I've read some of the things you've said here and there. The word ether is getting thrown around a lot now online, and I like that. I like that it's kind of having a resurgence. I think it's obviously the only proper framework of physics. I also think people may not fully grasp the implications of there being an ether. So I'll throw that over to you. And like I said, you can kind of choose how you want to go. If you have questions about FE, I like this to be real chill. I'm not trying to like get real cutthroat with anything, but I am kind of curious what your take on the ether historically, kind of what the implications of there being an ether are, and see where we maybe disagree.
Yeah, so historically, of course, we have biblical reference. We have things going into Tartaria and the presence of an ether, and much of that is very lacking in, I don't want to say lacking in substance that there's nothing there, but lacking in substance that we don't have enough information to really substantiate the Tartaria background and things of that nature. But I do think there's something, a point to it, and something that has been missed in our history, and something that has perhaps been buried or hidden. But I look at it just from a modern understanding of AC/DC power. We know that when a copper wire transmits power, the electrons are not transmitting within the copper, they are transmitting along the copper. And so to me, that says that there is electricity being pulled from outside of that wire and outside of the source of that power that would effectively be referred to as an ether. I do think there's grounds for that argument.
Okay, very cool. We agree for the most part on that. That's another conversation. Obviously, electricity. What is electricity? What is magnetism? What is light? Very profound conversations. I think simple but not simplex, and meaning that I think the explanation has to be very coherent and digestible and make sense for it to be correct. But I think it has a lot of nuances, and I side with Nikola Tesla, and I know the crowd's gonna get antsy. They want me to go at you about flat Earth, and we can get into it. Obviously, like the radius value of the Earth is where that whole thing boils down. But I think that this is very important, and I think this is a good way to kind of start it, and then I'll allow you to also feel free to bring anything up. But the way I feel about this is Nikola Tesla was correct, and he immediately called Einstein out. Right. This is the story we weren't told. And for that reason alone, this conversation is important. This resurgence of the layman being super interested in this realm and where we live in physics and what's really going on is very important, because we weren't told the full story, regardless of where anyone falls on it. If you think the Earth's a spinning globe flying through space, we were misled about a lot of the evidence, a lot of the understanding, a lot of the physics that supposedly got us here to think that. And primarily it being the whole throw the ether out, right? Tesla immediately said that this idea of Einstein's space curvature is ridiculous. He said for many reasons, but for one, space is nothing. Space is nothing in and of itself. It's an idea of emptiness or nothingness. And so that would be like saying space curves would be like saying something is acting on nothing. And for that very reason, it can't exist. He then said, even if we pretended it could, equal and opposite reaction would straighten it out, would straighten the curvature of space out. And then he went on to explain that you can't explain the motions without an indispensable field of force, et cetera, and that he used a mechanical ether to come up with all of his innovations, all of his understanding, et cetera. I side with him on a lot of it. I think he was wrong about some things, more so that he had not. We've learned things since then. Quantum has helped us learn a lot of stuff about what I consider the ether. But just to get straight to the point, obviously it got thrown out after Michelson-Morley. I don't know how familiar you are with that test, but obviously they didn't detect the fringe shift with the interferometer they expected if the Earth was moving through an ether. And so what they did was throw the ether out. And then they brought Einstein in to explain that time slowed down, the apparatus contracted, that we're free falling in a linear path, and we can't tell we're moving, basically, in really simple terms. And so I think that's where this whole thing starts. So have you ever looked into Michelson-Morley, or kind of what's your take on that test or the significance of that test?
So I am familiar, and my take on that is that Einstein came kind of out of the blue. He was an immigrant from Germany, and he had a history, and they teach this in elementary school to everyone nowadays, of how bad he was at math throughout his elementary school years and throughout high school, and how he failed algebra and all those things. But then he went on to work at the patent office, and while working at the patent office, he was able to develop a lot of things which very closely or almost exactly would match Lorentz, piezo, Poincare, Fitzgerald, Hilbert, Depreto, Besso, Hasenhol. And I would say that Einstein was himself a fraud and stole the majority of his works, which were regarded as his. But he also provided an opportunity in being a fraud to people like J.P. Morgan, who were doing their best to shut down Nikola Tesla. And I'm certainly on the side of Tesla, and some of my designs, which I'm releasing on June 8th, do use Tesla principles that are not accepted in Einstein physics, but Einstein was wrong about quantum. He was wrong against Niels Bohr. He was wrong to marry his cousin. And all around, I think Einstein was wrong and frankly a fraud. But I think that the test was probably paid for by J.P. Morgan, and it was probably used to discredit Tesla. And at the same time, Einstein was used in the same way, paid for and promoted and as the poster child of science of the day, when in reality he was simply a great thief.
Okay, so we agree on a lot of that. And it gets worse and worse. Like the very 40 space geometry from Einstein, like you said, Henri Poincare, he stole it from Poincare. It's all ridiculous. That's why we had 100 authors against Einstein at the time, Austrian and German scientists and physicists and engineers saying, get this mysticism out of here. This is not science. But very succinctly, right, we had an interferometer, and what it does for those in the audience who don't know, you have a light beam, you shoot the light beam out, and in order to ensure that they're going to split the light beam with the beam splitter, and in order to ensure that both of the beams of light are perfectly in phase, like so perfectly in sync, they split the same beam. That way, when you know it's in phase because it's a singular beam shot at the same time, you split it, it's perfectly in phase. Then they sent it into two different directions, orthogonal, so perpendicular to each other. They come back and recombine the middle, and then they go to the receiver. And based on where the Earth was supposed to be orbiting around the sun, the direction and time of the year, one of those light beams should have been behind the other one. Because basically, if there's an ether and the Earth is moving through it, it creates kind of a wind. And now the light's going to have to make its way through that wind based on the motion. And it did not detect it. So the part of that story that's always left out, like if you go read Wikipedia, it'll tell you just debunk the ether. But the part that's left out is that they did actually get a fringe shift, meaning that the light beams came back, they weren't completely together, they were separate. There was an interference pattern. And it was about 1/6 the value that it should have been if the Earth was orbiting the sun, 30 kilometers a second. So what they did was throw the ether out. I mean, and really, when I say they didn't do that. They, like Michelson, Albert Michelson, they said, okay, stationary ether doesn't seem to work. What's going on? Lorentz and Fitzgerald came up with all kinds of ideas to try to keep the ether and make it work. Because throwing the ether out was just ridiculous. Like no one even considered that. Einstein just stumbled around with a bunch of his stolen work in 1905, stitches it together, and just throws everybody a curveball. And eventually, no one else knew what to do. They didn't know how to explain it without Einstein's theory, right? But long story short, what I'm saying is there was an interference pattern, and they said, oh, it must be instrumental error. Now, this is the part that you won't know until you do kind of what the flat earthers do, and you go look into it super deep and read the papers yourself. And what has happened is that test has been replicated thousands of times, even in the 21st century, many times with immense precision. The test is consistent. We consistently get a fringe shift, right? We do not get it to be completely we don't eliminate interference pattern. And what Einstein himself said was, well, if Dayton Miller, who's the first guy who replicated it thousands and thousands of times, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of actual measurements, because he was doing them simultaneously and had it constantly running, he said, if those results are correct, my entire theory collapses like a house of cards. I have no explanation for it. It has to be some fundamental instrumental error. Well, we know it's not, because what he proved was that the interference pattern we get, it's in correlation with your altitude, so how high above the Earth you are, what time of the year it is, so solar motion, where the sun is in its cycle, in the periodicity of the sun, and direction. So anisotropic signal propagation has a preferred direction. Basically, the light appears to go faster one way than the other. And that is very significant. Okay, that's been completely buried. It's hard to even get your hands on his actual data, his actual charts. It's just been completely dismissed because there is no answer. So the way we understand it is what that actually proves is that the Earth is not moving, because for one, it shouldn't change with altitude, right? Because if any type of motion is because of the Earth, well, that motion should be the same no matter where you're at on the sphere based on latitude. It shouldn't change with altitude. And it shouldn't be changing based on the motion, because relativity says, oh, you can't detect the motion. And so without going too far into it, the idea is we can't actually detect or measure the Earth orbiting the sun according to relativity, and that is the current model. And it's not as simple as throwing relativity out. You're going to have something that's like relativity that says you can't detect the Earth's orbit. You can't detect motion, right? Because that's what the test showed. So I know it's a lot, but basically the periodicity and consistency of the interferometry measurements has shown and demonstrated that the Earth is not moving. And now when people are bringing up the ether, I'm like, I don't know that everyone really understands the implications of this. If we bring the ether back in, like an actual substantive background medium that everything is coming from, we got to go back to MMX, and it means that the Earth is stationary. There is no other explanation, because then we do Michelson-Morley and we get a rotational motion and stuff like that. So obviously, I just overloaded you, and there's tons more there, right? But I just want you to understand. You may have seen me say, like, if the ether's there, the Earth is stationary. And I kind of try to point this out because people throw the ether around a lot. So I'm curious, kind of, have you looked into that, or what your take on it? I know I just overloaded you, so no worries, but I was just curious.
So that's all very fair as far as the implications that the ether exists, but I don't think that the ether existing in and of itself means that the Earth is flat or not flat. And I do actually have a alternative explanation to both relativity and gravity, which Einstein, of course, was nowhere close to. So in our universe, which is truly an electric universe, as according to Tesla, we have basically an ocean of free-flowing electrons and electricity, in which, even in space itself, if we're going to say that there is a space, there would be basically small universes, microcosms of universes of electrons coming into and out of existence at any given time, as if we live in an ocean of electricity. But within any ocean, you have fluid dynamics. And in those fluid dynamics, you have surface tension. So if the Earth is a concentration of more electricity with a greater surface tension pulling things towards it through that electricity, we would have a higher concentration of electricity closer to the surface and a weaker concentration of electricity higher away from the surface, regardless of whether it was a globe or a flat plane. But along with that, we can also look into things like Einstein's theories on black holes, and even Stephen Hawking's theories on black holes, where they said, the gravity is so great, nothing will ever escape it. Well, they're wrong. We've seen coronal mass ejections, according to NASA, come out of black holes. And that means that what that black hole is actually showing us is a concentration of energy, which is absorbing the majority of the light that would otherwise try to escape due to its surface tension, and it is pulling that light back into that black hole, but that doesn't mean something couldn't escape it. So we can actually look at what those could realistically be. They could even be the lost civilizations we're looking for. The Fermi paradox could be we should be looking directly at black holes, because any civilization to go past a class 1 Fermi civilization needs to achieve free energy. And as they achieve free energy, they are pulling greater amounts of electricity out of the background electric universe that they are contained within. And the greater amount that they pull out, the more it is likely they would essentially cause what would be viewed as a black hole from outside of their sphere of influence, from outside of the reach of where their surface tension is pulling that energy. So it's completely possible, and I'm not saying that you're wrong, but it's completely possible on either a globe or a flat plane that we still live in an electric universe where it is the concentration of the ether being pulled towards the greatest concentration of electricity in the atoms and ions of the mass that is present here on Earth.
Okay, so I don't disagree. I don't specifically and definitively disagree with almost any of that. Like, just to clarify, the Michelson-Morley shows the Earth's not moving. It doesn't really show anything to do with the shape of the Earth. It shows the Earth can't be moving around the sun. The implications are pretty significant. You can obviously create a geocentric universe with the globe. And in fact, our geocentric models are made with the globe, typically, right? ECF, et cetera, et cetera. You can show a kinematic and dynamic equivalence and blah, blah, blah. But the Michelson-Morley, it disproves that the Earth is moving. The subsequent tests with Tate and Miller, and since then we've done millimeter radio wave precision measurements. The interferometry has been mind-blowingly precise since then and consistent. It shows anisotropic signal propagation, directly refuting relativity's prediction. It shows a correlation to periodicity and altitude. Impossible on a sphere that's spinning, specifically. That's spinning. Now, when it comes to... Good?
Sorry. So I would just counter that disproving relativity and disproving gravity, which have both been, in my opinion, disproven, does not prove that we are not moving or that we are flat. Now, if you're in any kind of fluid dynamics, if we think of a thick syrup, say maple syrup, and we were to put a model of a solar system within that thick maple syrup, and we were to stir it, things that are very close to one ball that we dropped in our bucket of maple syrup would stay very close to that ball because there is fluid dynamics that are holding it with the surface tension. So to say that we're not moving just because the light is staying with the Earth doesn't necessarily mean we're not moving. It just means the light is staying with the Earth.
Well, just to clarify, it's that it's not staying with the Earth. So relativity in the current model kind of predicts that it will. People think Michelson-Morley showed that it did and that blah, 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 but it actually doesn't, right? Like Michelson-Gale-Pearson, how we use ring laser gyros, that uses the Sagnac effect, and we can detect rotation with interferometry very precisely, in fact, right? Like we can measure the sidereal rotation, so the rate at which the stars spin. We can measure it predictably, very accurate with interferometry. The globe model, of course, says, well, that's because the Earth is spinning. You're detecting the Earth's spin. Fair enough, right? But what I'm saying is, actually, we've shown that it changes with altitude. And so if I'm on a sphere and it's spinning, it's going to detect a certain amount of spin based on your latitude on that sphere. But if I go higher and higher, I'm at the same angle on the sphere, so it's not going to change. It's changing with altitude, it's changing with the solar motion, so what time of the year it is, and it's changing with direction. That is specifically what refutes the globe. Sure, you can have an ether with the Earth moving in theory, but you're going to now have to have the ether moving with the rotation, moving with the different wobbles, and moving with the orbit. And at that point, you're presented a very serious mechanical issue because you can't actually compound those simultaneous vectors in different ways. And Lorentz actually tried to do this and just said, like it is kind of impossible to have a fluid substantive background moving with the Earth in all these different vectors. So that's my understanding. And I will say with the and by the way, there is no like mainstream academic rebuttal to this. They've just hidden it. And I'm sure you know what that's like, but that's what they do with almost everything. Almost all the reputations of relativity, for example, are just completely suppressed, ignored. It's like poison. You can't get within 100 yards of it because it's like death of your career, basically, if you are to talk about it. And I've had PhD physicists on who didn't talk about it till after he retired. right? And even though he wrote his thesis on the motion of rigid bodies and relativity, studied it for 40 years, like worked with people that worked directly with Einstein, knows it's not true, has to wait till he retires to say something. But that's a bit of a digression. I understand that if people haven't done like a lot of research into a lot of this, like the 𝐻𝐸 replications, the millimeter wave predictions and stuff like that, the Dayton-Miller replications, the implications of the Michelson-Gale-Pearson combined to Michelson-Morley, it's an overload of information. But when it comes to the ether and the gravity thing, I think I agree with you. I think we're in the same realm that gravity is not what people think it is. Everything's electric and there is an ether. And I would say specifically what's being called gravity, I think, is just an effect, right? And so you have basically the oscillations, so the oscillatory nature of the fluid background that is the ether, and we have an emergent property people call gravity. It's just like a displacement of that medium, and everything's electric. I think we would probably agree with that. I think anyone that's really looked into the evidence is starting to discover that everything's electric and comes from the ether. I guess, like, I don't want to just go back and forth over and over about the ether thing. From my understanding, though, like, if there is, in fact, a background medium that's fluid, or like you said, kind of like molasses or syrup, I don't remember exactly the way you described it, if we're flying through it, right, and then we're using interferometry as we're going these different vectors, we're going to be able to measure against it. And we are able to measure against it for the rotation, but not the orbit. And so what that proves is there is a rotation, right, that we're measuring the motion of, but there isn't another one. So then all we're left with is, oh, well, if Earth doesn't move, but the universe rotates, then we can measure that rotation just like we do, but there's nothing else to measure, right? There is no other motion to measure. So that's kind of where I'm at on that. But yeah, I mean, I know, like, it's not really fair for me to put you on the spot with all of the data of Dayton and Miller and these people. So I don't want to like push too hard.
Fine, and I'll say that, you know, it's definitely possible, and I would even agree that many of the tests disprove the things that mainstream science would accept, and there's really never been anything in mainstream science that lived more than a few generations before it was completely rewritten or disproven by another generation. So the idea that any kind of mainstream academia has figured out anything when we've barely developed for just a couple hundred years is a little bit ludicrous to me. But I would just say that the conclusions of the experiment disprove certain things, or they suggest certain things, but I still can't make that leap, and I'm not saying you're wrong, but I can't make that leap that says we're stationary or flat.
No, that's fine, man. Like I said, this is just about stationary anyway, but I'm happy to send you all the different papers and, you know, just check it out, man. You know, it's a rabbit hole, man. Like, and you'll get into things like, well, why do people think we know the Earth is moving? And you'll get into stuff like the Copernican principle, the idea that the Earth doesn't occupy a special or unique position. It's touted as some profound philosophy, but that isn't profound. Everything we experience is that the Earth is specifically unique. People become enamored with the idea that the universe is so big that we're insignificant, but maybe we are just significant, you know, and it's like, oh, well, all the observations we make show the Earth in the center, but it's just an illusion, and the tests show the Earth not moving. It's just an illusion. Maybe it's not. Maybe we are in the center. Maybe that's why distant galaxies move in relation to us, because they're moving in relation to us, right? So that's a whole different debate. Cosmology, you can get into the cosmic microwave background, the axis of evil, the inhomogeneous anisotropic distribution of the energy, and it goes on and on. The evidence is overwhelming that we're not moving as far as I'm concerned, but I'll ask you this on a more basic level. Do you agree that is kind of like the default with what we experience? The default position is that the Earth is not moving? If we were to use Occam's razor, that which requires the least amount of assumptions and is the simplest, most likely to be true. It isn't always true, right? But I'm just saying, like, as our default, our first step, like what we experience, you agree is that the Earth's not moving and everything in the sky is moving around the Earth?
So I would not necessarily agree, because if the Earth was not moving, then the sky would have no cause to move.
Well, you know, as to the cause of things moving, that's a great question, right? There is no one on the earth that can say they definitively know what causes the stuff in the sky to move. Because even if you think it's the earth rotating, well, it's like, well, then you're invoking something called gravity, because you're asking, now if the earth is rotating, it has to be revolving around the sun, so now there's a force called gravity, and everyone's attempt to explain it with quote-unquote gravity hasn't worked.
Gravity is false, right? So I completely concede. Gravity is fake. It's an effect. It is not a force. In that regard, we're 100% on the same page.
So I would just say, dude, that there are quite a few explanations. If you use a like kind of a Lorentz magnetic force, you can explain it. And so everything's just spinning around, basically in a giant torus field. Now, this is speculation. The thing about flat earthers is they're very specific. They're like, we want to prove it. We don't want to speculate too much. But if I'm going to speculate, everything's moving in the vortex that we see in the center of a magnetic field. I think magnetic fields are the secret to everything. Tesla agreed, said the rotating magnetic field was the most important discovery of his career. He said it's the key to everything, and he said no matter how far you go into the future, the center of all of the proper understanding of physics will be a rotating magnetic field. And I think that's what's going on. If you have specifically a plane, but it doesn't matter. Stationary Earth, you have a vortex of motion. Everything's whirlpooling around us in this giant ocean. Everything's spinning. And so that's the source would be whatever the primary mover was. And you can get more into specifics, of course. If you have a rotating universe, it generates forces as it rotates, as the angular momentum. That's going to create inertial forces. So you're going to have centrifugal force, a real Coriolis force, and then that Coriolis force will be twice the magnitude. So you'll have a radially inward force, accelerative force. And so it could, in theory, move almost perpetually. What you would need was something to have started it, right? You would need a primary mover to start it. If it's a giant magnetic field, obviously you have the vortex within that field. So what's in the center of the field? What's the source of it? What started it? Great questions. What all is in the ether? Who knows? I don't know. But I would just say that the default is that the Earth is not moving, right? Like we experience the Earth not moving. The interferometry shows the Earth not moving. We fly planes like the Earth is not moving. Like in theory, it could be moving, but I'm just saying that the default is that it's not moving.
Well, so I can't quite get there, but I do want to comment on the torus perspective, because at a fractal level, everything in our universe is a torus. That's that down to the quantums, to the atomic level, you have a center and everything is spinning around that. And we can look at our blood cells, or we could look at an apple or a tree, and literally everything in our universe that we observe, even humans, are a torus. Things go in the mouth and out the back. So we're actually donut shaped, if people didn't know. But so in that regard, though, regardless of whether the Earth is flat or a sphere, we would still be a torus. So that doesn't necessarily tell me whether we're flat or round.
You're right. None of this does. Although I will say, like, I think that's like the most profound, implication of this discussion is it changes everything. And actually now we kind of have an avenue to a unified theory, or even a theory of everything, which is geometry. It's the flower of life, sacred geometric expression. And I don't want to get too like wordy, if you will, right? But it's conjugate geometry, so it's just like two sides to the coin. They're joined at the hip. You have the hyperboloid and the toroid, the donut, the inside of the donut, right? The hourglass and the donut, and that's seen everywhere. That conjugate geometric expression. We have centrifugal divergence, so the motion diverging out from the center. Centripetal convergence, and they're overlaid, and it's this very majestic, complex kind of interplay, and it's seen everywhere, like you said, from the smallest scale, however people conceptualize that. There's lots of models there, to our local terrestrial scale, and then all the way into the quote-unquote universe. We see the same types of motion, the same geometry. So I think we agree there. What I would say is, so there's something in the middle of a magnetic field called a Bloch domain wall, named after the guy who discovered it, Bloch. I refer to it as a plane of inertia, because I think that describes what it is. It's unchanging. It's an inertial plane, but there's just this plane right through the middle of a torus field called a Bloch domain wall. And so in our understanding, the Earth would be that plane, This doesn't prove it, but it's viable. And I would say the alternative is not viable. There'd be a vortex in the center. We experience the top half of the torus field. We're on the plane through the middle. And when we actually map the planets out from a geocentric position, they make a flower of life. They make like a torus field geometry. So everything has now fit in real snug and coherent. And you can just use magnetism as the dynamic force. And that changes. I mean, now all of a sudden things start making sense. Everything that we observe making the Earth look like in the center is because it is in the center. The vortex motion, it makes sense that it changes with altitude because we're detecting the motion of the sky. We're getting higher up, closer to the sky. It makes sense that it changes based on where the sun is because we're detecting the actual energy and motion from the sky. So, yeah, that's how that goes. And if you want to get into the flat part, we certainly can.
Yeah, I know what your viewers want. They want us to fight, but let's see if we can find something to fight about. So in that regard, I did have some notes. I just wanted to ask more or less for your explanation as a flat earther on a few different things that are observable. So first, meteors. What's the deal if we're on the flat earth?
Yeah, so good question. I mean, when it comes to the rocks themselves falling from the sky, there's like not really a ton of evidence for that. I mean, I guess there was one claimed recently, I think, one claimed in Russia. That's pretty much it. But we see meteor showers, right? And so as to what meteor showers are, I mean, they look like electrical discharges, like exactly like electrical discharges. And you'll see that there's 6 primary radiant sources of sporadic meteor showers. So they all come out of these same 6 radiant sources, like cyclically and periodically, predictably. And so to me, it leans towards a cyclical electrical discharge. Basically, there's a system that charges up. Eventually, it starts to discharge, and it shoots off these discharges cyclically. And actually, that'll get into, well, what is that, right? What is charging? What is discharging? That's a whole thing. That's a whole nother conversation, but I go with kind of like the fatherheads of electrical field theory. So whether it be Heaviside, you name it, Charles Produce, Steinmetz, Nikola Tesla, right? But charging and discharging is what people call positive and negative. And as something reaches its capacitance, so it's storage for electrical storage, right? Its threshold, it discharges the excess. I think that's what the meteor showers are. I've never been up there. But, all these things, all these craters called meteors, impact meteor craters, there's no rocks. It's just, it's a claim. They're like, conveniently, the claim's unfalsifiable, right? The rock disintegrates, it explodes, so it makes a perfect 90-degree impact and blah, blah, blah. So I don't necessarily buy that. It was predicted in a science fiction book before it was ever allegedly discovered. I think that we just see electrical discharges.
So I could see the electrical discharge theory, but there are people that find meteors. There's people that, of course, you can follow little people, not some academic, nonsense profile, but just guys with a snapshot or stories on YouTube who go out and hunt meteors, and they pick up these rocks, and they can be worth quite a bit of money. So are we assuming that they're selling these rare rocks that they think are meteors, that they followed, a falling indication based off of some sort of satellite map? They find this rock and they're selling it, and somebody's paying good money for that. Are we just assuming that person is getting scammed, or what are we thinking is happening?
Yeah, that's what I think. I think the people selling it aren't scamming anyone, but yeah, I mean, they say 86% of moon rocks were found on the Earth, and conveniently, most of them in Antarctica. So they're terrestrial rocks, and people have a belief that they fall from the sky. I don't knock them for their belief, and if someone wants to spend a lot of money on that, go for it. But like I said, they say 86% of moon rocks are found on Earth. And so that's why it's also ridiculous to be like, oh, well, we know we went to the moon because, look, they have moon rocks. It's like, well, they say they find them all over the Earth, so that is what I think. I think the Earth develops all kinds of rocks. There are many different crazy-looking rocks, and they've decided a specific kind come from space, and then people just kind of believe that. I will say this, and I'm happy to answer your questions because I think you've come here in good faith, and I'll answer all your questions, but I just want to point out that one thing I do always like to say for the audience is the instinctive response to flat Earth is to be like, well, how would this work? And like I said, I think that's good faith. It's reasonable to do that. But I do also think that it doesn't technically matter. Like, it doesn't actually change anything. Like, if you were in theory to falsify the globe, it remains falsified regardless if I replace every theory or whatever, right? I just want to throw it out there, but I'll happily answer a few more of your questions, and then maybe we can get into what I consider falsification of the globe, because then the rest would just have to follow suit regardless of what we do or do not know, you know?
Sure. So, yeah, absolutely. So hurricanes, and I don't know if you've ever seen this one. I'm gonna pull up a screenshot here to share.
You should have perms, I think.
Yep. Sharing. I got way too many windows open, as one does. All right.
All right, let me make sure I get it looking all right for them. All right, give me just a second to make sure they see it. All right, they can see it.
Okay, cool. So now this is basically a map of hurricane trajectories recorded since the 50s. Now, obviously, we don't have hundreds of years of data on trajectories of hurricanes, but if we're looking at this, we do clearly see a Coriolis effect. We see a rotational effect in the North Pole, in which the cyclone, if you will, is rotating clockwise. And in the South Pole, we see counterclockwise, and we see a clear divide. But more importantly, we see hurricanes have not crossed the equator in our known history. And I did look pretty hard. I couldn't find a single record of one ever crossing the equator. So if that's the case, it again does not prove we're on a globe. It doesn't prove that we're flat. But my question is, what accounts on the flat Earth model for the effects that we can observe in the equator?
Yeah, that's interesting. It's the equator is well, where we got the line of the equator, right, is from Polaris angle measurements, right? And so where we typically see Polaris start to go beyond the horizon, although it does fluctuate, you can see it below there. Anyway, and then it seems to be like where the sun is going to be the closest to throughout the year, and specifically where it spent its longest time over. And so there is like this, if inside of a torus field, you have different circles and you have rotations and counter rotations within that. You have a rotation and a counter rotation. So for there to be like some type of divide in the center actually matches what we see on the smaller scale when we examine the actual mechanics and motion of torus fields. You can look up rotation and counter rotation, or vortex and anti-vortex in a torus field. I will say it's very interesting. I didn't really necessarily know that they've never even gone on the equator. This map is basically showing them never even hitting the equator, which is pretty crazy. I don't know.
This supports me or you. I mean, I guess it doesn't really matter if the data is accurate, but it supports something, and this is a clue, I guess I would say. And then if I'm to go to, I got some maps, and I'm gonna let you show me your map of what a flat Earth is supposed to look like. But if I go to a heat map, so a heat map of what the Earth is known to have temperatures that are, of course, freezing in the North Pole, freezing in the South Pole. And so in this, can we both agree that the sun is traveling along the equator? If this is the result and the equator has specific effects, is that a reasonable agreement between both potential models?
Yeah, just to clarify, like, so from my understanding, there has been like a typhoon cross the equator before. It's just very rare. But, and in addition, yes, I agree. Obviously, we can see from heat signatures, temperature recordings, that where the sun seems to, like I said earlier, kind of keep its longest, like keep over the longest, stay over the longest, is going to be the hottest. Actually, this makes more sense on a flat projection. I will pull it up in just a second, but actually the tilt of the globe would kind of necessitate that the equator is not the hottest part, because the actual 90-degree angle tilt, or angle rays hitting the 23.4 degree tilt, would actually have it slightly off the equator. But you see, this would actually kind of explain the division between the phenomena of hurricanes as well, right? Because it would be like an induction from the motion of the sun. So since the sun does this, we actually have a natural separation also within the torus field. Now, on the globe, it's basically the rotation of the globe separating them in theory, right? Causing them to go different directions on both sides. So if one's ever gone over it, wouldn't that, I'm curious what you think, say a typhoon has gone over the equator, wouldn't that kind of refute the claim that they're separated by the spin of a globe?
It would be a data point, so I don't think it
Fair
in
enough,
and of it would prove either way. But it's a data point.
Fair enough. Hey, do you care if I want to share a screen too? Keep yours. Oh, okay. I think we might can both do it, but it's okay. Let me
Now, I do want to say while you're pulling that up, the precession of the Earth at 23.5 degrees is definitely a thing that you're correct that would show in the heat map and should show in the heat map. But there's also the human error factor. Did the humans that make this do it completely honestly, or did they adjust it to look right to what we know in our current paradigm as acceptable maps of the world? And did they maybe cut out that precession in some way? And frankly, I don't know.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, well, for one, I'll find the meme that kind of explains that. But let me show you this. So share screen. All right, this is called Bob Wins. Now, interestingly enough, this used to be on like all the mainstream sites, the data sites, and then people started really getting a hold of the AE projections, and they pulled them off. But anyway, so this guy has basically taken the data from same source, the same site, but added AE map back. So it's bobwins.com. But if you come over and say, for example, if you look at the wind patterns, you can come down to a lower altitude. You can see the wind patterns. You can see the magnetic flux. And so you can see the oceans. I wanted to say that it has, I thought it had the temperature, but maybe it doesn't actually have the temperature. These are the clouds. This guy showed that you can project the clouds onto a plane because people thought that was somehow exclusive to the globe. So this one doesn't actually have it on there. I'll find a screenshot of the temperature. But what's very telling when you see it is that when you see the temperature laid out on the flat Earth, it makes perfect sense. It's right where you would expect it to be at the equator. But the globe, right? The globe is tilted. And like you said, I mean, to make sure the audience knows how we came up with the idea that, sorry, I showed something else. I'll get a picture. I'll see if someone will drop it in my chat. But the way we came up with the 23.4 is by looking at the sun, right? So like we looked at the sun moves in an analemma and it moves on this little tilt, right? It has its own like a little ecliptic cycle, and people are like, okay, well, that must be because we're tilted, making it look like that. And of course, the sun could just be doing that. But what I mean specifically is if you have the sphere tilted, and then you have the light rays coming from 90 million miles away, it's actually, since the Earth is tilted towards it, right? It's not going to hit right in the middle. It's like, now, if it was perfectly straight up and down, it would hit the equator first, right? Because it bulges out. But since it's tilted, it actually would hit a little bit above it. And we don't see that with the heat distribution. We actually see it towards the equator now on a flat Earth. That makes perfect sense because it's the circle over the middle portion where the sun goes the most. Does that make sense?
Just to defend the globers on that, and I'm not really one or the other, but they would probably answer that by saying that with seasons, we are seeing as the Earth is both on that gyroscopic precession, but also rotating around the sun, we would see a difference in seasons that would show the Earth is warming a higher part or a lower part as it goes around that ellipse. So again, it's definitely possible in either scenario, but I would love for either one to be proven to me.
Okay. So, and like I said, if you have a list of more questions, we can get those in a second, but I'll just kind of tell you where I'm at and like the reason that so many flat earthers exist, right? I'm sure you maybe have heard some of it if you have a friend that's a flat earther, but it comes down to if the Earth is a sphere, with a radius of 3,959 miles, then the Earth has to curve at a specific rate. And so it's roughly 7.98 inches per mile squared. That's accurate up to like 1,000 miles of observations. So for intensive purpose of any type of observation, it's good. In fact, after 1,000, as it starts to separate from the globe model, it actually gives the globe the advantage. It curves less than the globe actually would. But anyway, but the curvature of the Earth should be at 1.225 times the square root of the observer's height in feet. So if I'm 1 foot tall, which no one is, of course, but the square root of 1 is 1, so 1 times 1.2, which means if you're 1 foot above the Earth, you should see the geometric curve at 1.2 miles away to start blocking things. Okay, the flat Earth position is, the globe predicts that there should be a physical geometric limitation to how far we can see that obstructs things in the distance consistently based on geometry, and that is not what we observe. We have gone out and made observations 1 foot off the surface where we see the horizon over 10 miles away. It should be at 1 mile. We see it over 10 miles. And people will just say the word refraction. And I'm sure you know that's the supposed answer. But like, there's actually problems with that. For one, refraction, there are specific types of refraction, and they're all in relation to the horizon. Like looming is in relation to the horizon. So only once flat Earth got real big did somehow everyone just mass adoption of like the horizon itself is being affected by refraction, and we won't specify what type. So anyway, that's the point. If you agree that if we falsify the radius value in theory, that would falsify the globe?
No, I don't. But I want to show you why.
Okay, I got you pulled up.
Yeah, so I got this pulled up, and on a model, basically this is to the millimeter of the circumference of the globe. So it's in millimeters, but this is what they say the appropriate size would be. And this is roughly the size the Earth would have to be if it were a flat plane. Now, if I go into visualization and I've got my globe there, I can actually zoom in here, and I've got a flat face on my globe. And this flat face is 1,300 millimeters in diameter, which means that observing the globe from out here, it's almost unrecognizable. But by relation to being on the Earth, that means there could potentially be divots or dips or places where it isn't a perfect sphere, where you have distances that are as great as 1,300 miles. Now, if we're observing something where we can see 10 kilometers away, or I think I saw one that was claiming 560 miles away, that doesn't necessarily mean that the Earth is flat. It means that there is a flat spot on potentially whatever surface they're standing on where they can observe that far away.
Okay, well, so you're saying basically it's like a golf ball.
Yeah.
Well, but for the globe model to be true, we have to have a specific radius value, and so we would be able to, you would have to then know that there are these major slope deviations. Let me swap back over. Wherever we spot these. And so what they've now, like the question would then immediately be, the follow-up would be, how many flat spots can you have on a ball, right? Like, is it literally a golf ball? Because we've seen these all over the world. And if you see what I'm saying, like say you have, we've had some observations that are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of miles in planes with infrared and stuff like that. Let's say like, oh, just that part's flat. Okay, well then if the Earth was a globe, it would have to compensate for the R value pretty significantly once you start compiling these flat spots up. And that obviously doesn't happen, right? But that means we would have insane slopes from the flat spot down to the rest of the curve. And like I said, it's been done all over the Earth. So that's like the major problem with the, like, okay, when I first heard about this, I started seeing this stuff. I thought, well, maybe the Earth's just a bigger sphere. Like that idea did cross my mind, and I'm like, no, that doesn't work, right? Because like we use that size for the whole model, everything, distances and day and night and everything. So the radius value has to be correct. The radius value wrong, it's all wrong. The idea of like flat spots can float for a second until you realize that these are hundreds of miles all over the Earth, and then it would cause like major slopes. You would have to correct for those things. I mean, it would be like life-changing slopes, right? So that would be my answer. The radius value, like we can't just make it a bigger sphere or change the R value because the whole model uses it. The day and night cycle uses it, the distances, the gravity. These claims of going to space use it.
But those things aren't on the surface. So the surface could still be very much rugged. And of course, we know we have mountains and we have valleys and we have everything else. So why would we not have divots in the earth where there are low points? And we could actually look at, and I was trying to find a good proof of why the equator was actually sending water all towards it, right? But I found rivers that flow from south to north that are in the northern hemisphere. But why would that happen? If the river I'm talking about, which is in Minnesota flowing into Canada, was flowing from a highland into a lowland, that would be the answer whether we were on a globe or a flat plane. So in that regard, we have to admit that there is, at a minimum, on a flat plane or a globe, areas on the Earth where we are able to observe great distances that are solely observable simply because of the geography and the terrain, and we don't necessarily know whether that is observable because of the shape of the Earth.
Well, the problem with that is yeah, so on a globe, in a globe paradigm, the flat areas, like say the salt flats, right? Like they're flat, but horizontal it's just like it's level relative to a globe. So sure, it's flat because the scale of the Earth, it's just that it doesn't have much topography or whatever, but that it's actually curving at a consistent rate, that entire flat spot. And like, that's like the globe paradigm, right? So when we do sea level, we obviously measure vertical elevation above a horizontal baseline to get all elevation in the world. They'll say, oh, well, you can just treat it like it's flat. We can fly the plane like it's flat or whatever. So like if that's where you're treating it like it's flat in the globe paradigm, it's still technically curving just at the scale, right? And that scale is 8 inches per mile squared, right? 3,959 mile radius, which means even in like the salt flats, we should be measuring curvature. Because if you have flat spots all over it, it's going to actually drastically alter the R value, and then you're going to have to overcompensate to reach that rate. And now you're going to have, like I said, incredibly drastic slopes, and it can't be the case. I want to show you this though, so because someone dropped it in the chat, I just want to show you so you can visually see it, and the audience can as well. This is this is what I was talking about here, and let me swap over and make this big. You can see that? So if you see the sun rays here coming in at 90 degrees, it should be slightly above the equator based on the tilt. But we see, obviously, the concentrated hot part is right here. On a flat Earth, that's exactly what is expected. That's where the sun moves, right? Okay. So just to give a visualization.
I like that, but that raises its own questions. So now I've adjusted my same model. I just turned the Earth into the sun here.
Are you sharing also?
Yeah, I am.
Okay, let me pop that up.
All right.
This shows the loading bar for me. Is it just loading for you too?
No, I just.
Oh, maybe I need to stop.
Yeah, probably.
No, but it's still loading. Wait. Stop. I don't know. So on your end, you can see something. Okay, let's try it again. Yeah.
Try again. Okay.
Yeah, there we go.
There we go. Okay, so I turned our Earth into the sun, and this is a representation of a flat Earth, right? Now, we agree that some point of the Earth is, during all times of the 24-hour day, going to have some amount of sunlight on it, right? And we also agree that if the sun was over a flat Earth, it's basically, that's not what I want. Let me move it around here. So it's basically doing a circular rotation over the equator, right?
Oh, yeah.
Now, if we're agreeing on that, then that would mean that at any given time, no matter where you are on the surface of the Earth, you should be able to look through a telescope or look up in the sky and see the sun. And how low would the sun have to be to not see it and to have night somewhere else? Or even if the sun's light didn't go very far, would we not be able to pull up a telescope and take a look at the sun as it's over Australia when we're in the United States?
No, because like the attenuation of light, so the absorption rate of the light into the medium, which is relative to turbidity, so turbulence of the medium and the density, it's going to absorb the light. That's why sometimes we can't even, sometimes the sun sets above the horizon, sometimes it sets into the atmos. Sometimes you can't see the mountains until they become backlit. It's called attenuation. So the local light source moving over top of the earth, it would have a radius of light, which is going to give you the day and night. It's only going to light up so much at a time. And then as it gets further and further away, it's eventually going to be attenuated for the observer, meaning like it's going to be going through too much atmos to see it. There's no way we could pull out a telescope and look at the sun from that far away, because we can't even see mountains from 120 miles away because of attenuation. And then the sun will set behind it and it'll backlight those mountains and we can see them again. So that means the mountains were there the whole time. We couldn't see them because the light from those mountains got attenuated. Obviously, the sun's much brighter, just like in that example. We see the sun light them up, right? But as it gets further and further and further, now you're talking about way more compounding atmos. I'm curious, so can you bring back your heat distribution map? Do you have that conveniently where you can pop that back up? Sorry if that's inconvenient. You brought up like that heat distribution map, do you remember? But it was on like the Mercator projection.
That one.
Let's see. Yeah, I see it. I don't know why it's not showing it. This thing is hating on us, man. Can you try to stop and share again? I'm sorry.
Okay. Yeah, no worries. I think it was just popping up, but that's all right.
Okay, perfect. All right. So do you see how different the cold, see how different the colder areas are in the north and the south?
Yep.
Do you see how much bigger it is in the south?
So that would be the suggestion that the sun is essentially tiny, right? Because it would have to be tiny for it not to cover the entire Earth. It would have to be, of course, a size. I don't want to make assumptions, but I'm guessing we would be saying it's designed by God, because if we are in a dome and we are in that type of model, I would imagine most flat earthers would believe that God made it so, and that's fine. I'm a man of faith. I believe in God, so no worries there. But so if that's the case, we're saying the sun is so weak that it doesn't reach the other side of Earth on flat Earth. But we can observe through a telescope the moon, and we can observe planets like Jupiter and Saturn and Venus through a telescope, and we can see stars out in space. So how can we see those things that must be farther from the Earth than the sun, if the sun is so close and we can't see it?
Yeah, because we're looking through a different medium for one, right? So if you're looking out horizontally, I just real fast though, I just wanted to show to the audience that doesn't make, your picture doesn't make sense on a globe, because it should be symmetrical in the north and the south. So a sphere is symmetrical in the north and the south, yet look at the south, significantly different than the north. It has a much bigger cold zone. It gets all the way down to like kind of what would look like that ice wall. It has a much bigger concentrated area of a colder zone. It should be symmetrical on the globe. And also, as we showed earlier, right, like it shouldn't, the hottest part of the Earth shouldn't be on the equator. It should be slightly above it based on the tilt. So this makes perfect sense on the flat Earth, because the sun is going to move from the center out. It's going to spend most of its time in that interior equatorial circle, and that means that the extremities are going to be cold, and that's just going to be in relation to proximity to how far it goes out. So you don't have symmetry on a flat Earth, right? Because the north and south are different. But on a sphere, you have symmetry, yet the heat distribution map shows in two different ways that the globe is not matching the evidence. So I just wanted to point that out. And then I want to also make sure that people don't think I'm kind of like making stuff up. It's Tropical storm Vamei, I don't know how to pronounce it, VAMEI, crossed the equator, which I guess, to be fair, you said it would be a data point, and I get that. So cool. Let me close this and pop us back over. So yeah, and like this is kind of why flat earthers exist, just so you know, bro. Like every time, it seems like every time we get into something, it's like, wait a minute, why is that? The real thing is that we all would say we falsify the radius. So yeah, and I can give you a few examples of how I think that we've done that. I think one of the strongest arguments for a flat Earth is actually the electric field of the Earth. So we have equipotential surfaces. So we just have horizontal layers of the electric field, and it increases 100 volts per meter, right? So 100 volts per meter, equal potential increase. And it continues to go up, and then it creates a downward electric current of 10 microamps per cubic meter. So it's really weak, but there's like naturally just a current coming from the sky down to the earth. You can run generators off of it, right? Corona motors, electrostatic generators. The problem for the globe in that scenario is that it's on a sphere. It would be basically concentric circles, the electric field, and so it would have a radial distribution. But we actually have like equipotential surfaces that are horizontal. We have like a linear electric field, right? So we have uniformity in our electric field, 100 volts per meter, and that's not how it would be on a sphere. It would drop off in proportionate to distance away from the center. So it would be radial distribution. So the electric field on the Earth doesn't comport to a sphere either. Because like I said, like a sphere would have concentric circles that would have radial distribution, but our actual electric field, it has uniformity, and it's like horizontal parallel equipotential surfaces that can reliably be measured. So I don't know what you think about that, but I think that is just impossible on a sphere. I think the electric field itself is physically impossible because we can replicate this in a lab, right? We can show that with a conductive spherical surface, you're going to have a radial distribution of charge out from that surface, but the electric field on the Earth does not do that. I don't know if you've ever heard of that.
So I think it would work with the fluid dynamics of an electric ocean if we are in an electric universe, but it doesn't work within mainstream academia as far as explaining how that would affect it. But that I would go back to disproving mainstream academia doesn't prove we're flat or round.
That's true, yeah, but I don't like, regardless of I don't see how an ether fluid would do that though. Like, it's just based on the geometry of the Earth, right? So I don't know what you think electricity is. From my understanding, in an ether framework, like Tesla said, electricity is the ether thrown into motion. So electricity in motion, or magnetism is the ether thrown into motion. Static electricity is the ether under stress or strain. But the problem is it's actually geometric. The geometric, so throw the mainstream model out, right? Bring in an ether. It's like, well, it's still a geometric claim of a sphere. And so then it's going to have radial distribution of charge because electricity would be coming from the ether. But the problem is, even the fluidity wouldn't really help explain that, right? Because it's actually consistent and uniform. It's a uniform vertical electric field. So if you just drew like horizontal lines parallel to each other stacked up from the surface, that's what our electric field does. But if the Earth was a sphere and it had an electric field around it, it would be radial distribution. So it would fall off proportionate to the distance from the center of the sphere. So frankly, it's just impossible.
Yeah, that's where the surface tension of fluid dynamics would come into play. But I would say that both of us could be really missing the boat here, in that if we simply added another state of matter that could account for either one of our shortcomings in proving our theory. So the ether, of course, was regarded in its day as a state of matter, and we're trying to relate it to electricity or to think that it flows, against something like a mountain and stops, but instead it has an equal distribution throughout. So it's fully possible, given our fledgling, undeveloped human race that's only got a couple hundred years of science behind it, that we simply don't know what we don't know, and there's a completely other state of matter that accounts for that. But again, it doesn't prove whether we're flat or round.
Well, I mean, respectfully, man, you do keep saying that, but I disagree, right? So like another problem with the electric field is that on a sphere, it's going to be strongest at the surface. So you're going to have radial distribution. It's going to be strongest at the surface. But the electric field that we have on the Earth is actually inverted. It's the opposite of that. Like the field strength increases away from the surface, similar to like a capacitor. So like the evidence shows that we have a horizontal baseline, we have parallel horizontal equipotential surfaces, which is just a fancy way of saying like horizontal field lines where every meter you get 100 volts, 100 volts per meter. It's just a bunch of horizontal increases that are equally increasing, and it's inverted. It's directly the opposite of the sphere. It should be the strongest at the surface. Rather, it's the opposite. It gets stronger away from it, similar to a capacitor. So the evidence of the electric field shows us like very straightforward that the geometry of the Earth isn't spherical. The distribution of our charge isn't spherical. And this is like not even really known about. The average person doesn't even know that you can like just take a generator out, set it on the ground, hook some strings to it and run a generator. Much less do they really know how the electric field works. But so that would be my take on that. But I mean, I think you gave your take. You think it doesn't necessarily prove it. I disagree. I think it's a geometric falsification of the sphere in terms of electrical field theory. What do you think about this? Have you ever heard of and I appreciate you being a good sport, man, because you're in a tough spot. I'm be honest with you. I'm trying not to be like too over the top, but have you ever heard of like radio wave and microwave transmissions on a globe?
Yes. Now, I will say on a dome, that'd be a lot easier. So there are some things, and I was thinking this through. If we were a dome, and I'm an inventor, and we're living under a dome, there are some capabilities I would have because we're in a dome that I wouldn't have if we're in a globe. And one of those would be radio and microwave signaling. I would be able to set up a power antenna anywhere on the Earth and send a signal anywhere on the Earth with simple radio, because there isn't going to be any dissipation of that signal to such an effect that it completely evaporates. I'd be able to bounce it off that dome and send it to the other side of the planet, which of course fixes the line of sight problem we have with satellites. So if we are in a dome, why aren't we doing that? Why aren't we using the dome itself to travel when we could simply, if my understanding is it's water-based or an ocean above us. If that was the case, we'd be able to basically hook something into that ocean and travel along it with ease compared to trying to burn fuel to travel through the air. So there's a lot of things where I was like, well, that'd be cool, but I don't see where we can do those things.
Yeah, I mean, technically these are kind of like appeals to incredulity, right? Like I get it. Like you're saying, I don't see why we wouldn't have done this. I don't understand how this would work. If this was the case, wouldn't we be doing that? Well, of course, let's just address the obvious. If the military were to know about some type of like very effective methodology or technology like that, we're not going to know about it. I mean, UFOs work some way, right? I would say it's electrogravitic propulsion, but I want to point out real quick, it is funny those kind of tied together, and that's why I transitioned into the radio waves, right? So, like the globe does say there's an ionosphere and it bounces things back, but so when it comes to the electrical field, right, the argument gets even like a step stronger because it actually requires what's called a Gaussian surface. So in order to have this electrical field that we have on the Earth, so it's like evenly distributed, it's uniform, and it increases 100 volts per meter, and it's like parallel horizontal field lines. In order to have that, you have to have two Gaussian surfaces. Okay, so you have to have two parallel plates. For example, I've replicated this, kind of showing that gravity is not what people think it is, and you can change the weight of something, what direction it goes, whatever, just manipulating the electric field it's in. And so I used a Van de Graaff generator. I put two parallel metal plates, right? So they're just flat metal plates. So what that does is makes the electric field distribute in a finite volume, right? And you get this uniform, evenly distributed field that has a gradient, a vertical gradient. Then I basically flipped it with the Van de Graaff, right? Putting like the negative on the top, quote unquote negative on the top. So I flipped the field and then the object floated. And I did it with, iron filings, styrofoam, rubber, paint, hair, all kinds of different materials to show that it doesn't matter what material it is. Even insulators do it. So what that shows us, I replicated the field exactly. It shows that gravity, for one, like the idea of gravity is complete kind of pseudoscience, and people are trying to explain something that doesn't need to be explained. It's all electric. It's all about the electric field. But further, it replicates exactly what we see on the Earth's electric field, which means that we need a Gaussian surface. Now, that's a major problem for the sphere, because obviously on a plane Earth, you can have two parallel Gaussian surfaces, one above us. On the globe, you cannot have a horizontal Gaussian surface. Of course, the field lines are horizontal, so that means that the plates are going to have to be as well, because the field lines are parallel to that. So that does transition into this radio idea, right? There is something above us, and it is being utilized, and there's ample evidence that radio waves can be sent off of certain areas in the sky. HARP, for example, or like even just amateur radio. Even the Germans back in the day, I think apparently the Germans, they skipped over the way that they would send a signal to someone. This is the story, like say over a mountain, was they'd shoot it up and it would bounce back down or whatever. That's the story. But long story short, we understand that there is some type of containment. There is a surface. There's a Gaussian surface. So that right there, I think, again, the antecedent of the requirement of a physical Gaussian surface to have the electric field we have, and it needs to be horizontal. That doesn't work on a globe, right? So you have radial distribution, the field's inverted, and you can't have uniformity, and you need a Gaussian surface. I know that was a lot, but I know you don't, I mean, maybe look into it, like the audience can as well. I know that I'm like overloading you, but it's very, very damning evidence, I would say.
So I would still say it doesn't prove one way or the other. If you have a surface tension, which is pulling towards the concentration of mass of electrons, then you are going to have a greater concentration close to the globe. Now, to say that every 100 meters we're gaining so many volts, now that may be true and that may be measurable, but what was a volt originally based off of? And is that some fractal of what is naturally occurring? We don't necessarily have a way to know that at the moment. The technology I'm putting out on June 8th actually will prove quite a bit of this one way or the other, whether I'm right or you're right. But it doesn't negate the possibility that we could be on a globe, and it doesn't prove that we are on a flat Earth.
Yeah, so like I said, we definitely disagree on that. I think there has to be radial distribution, geometrically speaking, ether, no ether, or whatever. But we can disagree. So another thing is, like I was saying about the radio waves. So what we do is we send radio waves out line of sight, and you go back to Marconi. Marconi sent it 2,200 miles, and everyone was like, bro, you're not going to be able to do that, right? Because the Earth's going to block it. He's like, okay, well, we'll try. Like the curvature of the Earth should have blocked it like 100 miles or less, and he shot it and received it first time 2,200 miles away. The transatlantic signal, right? So everyone was like, wait, how does this work? Because the Earth's a globe, should have blocked it. And then Oliver Heaviside, who was a genius, he came up with the idea of the ionosphere. And it's like, oh, there must be something that's up there, that's ionized, that's reflecting the waves back down, just making it look like it's flat, basically. And of course, the globe ran with that because they kind of have to. You see how it in the theory that like we're going to pretend the Earth's a globe, but it's not. It would have some legs because there is something above us. Just looking at the electrical field, there has to be something serving as the Gaussian surface above us. So anyway, long story short, this is where it refutes the globe, though. So we shoot radio signals out. They say the ionosphere goes up to about 40 megahertz, which means that any radio wave frequency below that is going to reflect back down. But once it is higher, it's going to penetrate it. So like obviously plasma, is ionized gas. The ionosphere is just plasma. It's ionized gas. At a certain frequency, if you shoot a radio wave at it with like less megahertz, it'll bounce back to you. And you can replicate this in a lab. That's a real thing, right? Heaviside, like I say, always a genius. He didn't just make up something that doesn't exist in physics. But if I shoot a higher frequency, it's going to go right through it. It's going to slice through it like butter, right? Completely unaffected because the frequency's higher. So it's going to go right through the plasma. We shoot, again, the ionosphere is supposedly 40 megahertz. We shoot radio waves hundreds of megahertz, thousands of miles, like the world records we've sent, say like even just 100 or even 200, 300, 400 megahertz, 2,000, 3,000, 3,500 miles. They should be blocked at like a couple hundred miles. The major problem is it can't bounce off the ionosphere, which was the globe's excuse for all this time, right? It was like, oh, it bounces off the ionosphere, so it's bouncing up and down skywise propagation, so it can go further than the curvature of the Earth allows. This frequency is way too high. It would go right through the ionosphere into space. So I would say that's like a direct physical refutation as well of the globe, even if I grant the ionosphere, which I think is, I don't have to do that, but do you see what I'm saying?
It refutes, as you said, that the ionosphere is supposedly 40 megahertz, but you're working off the prior claims of other scientists who are also claiming that the world is a globe, right? But to assume that they're right and then say that because they're wrong, that's flat, it just doesn't really work, because we don't know that they're right to begin with.
Sure. What you said? What you're saying? Something?
No, it's just what is the basis of our foundational information? So if we both agree NASA's full of shit, we both agree Einstein's full of shit, right? And I'm not trying to get swearing and get you kicked off YouTube or anything. Sorry. But,
no, it won't get me kicked off. I just keep the weak words to minimum, but you're good.
Yeah,
I call them weak words. I call them weak words.
Fair. So if we know these scientists are largely wrong about almost everything, and we agree, I think, on that point, how can we use their claims to say that, well, this says the Earth is flat because they're wrong about this? Well, but we already know they're wrong. I think that's the only settled science today, is that science is almost always wrong. But we don't know what that actually means.
Yeah, I mean, and like, it's all really pretty simple for me, right? Like, the horizon's horizontal. We measure the surface of the Earth using plane survey as if it's flat. We fly the plane as if the Earth is flat and stationary. We use all technology. We do all engineering, build bridges, runways, railways, canals, all as if the Earth is flat and a plane. And then when we go out and do laser tests, we shoot laser tests over frozen bodies of water at different wavelengths far beyond the curvature of the Earth, and we keep receiving them. We shoot radio waves even into the gigahertz, far above the frequency that can reflect off the ionosphere, which is like, the mainstream accepted answer. And the reason is actually because they can't formulate a mechanism that would allow it in the globe paradigm with the atmosphere the way it is, that would allow that frequency to be that high, any higher than that. Trust me, they would love to have higher frequencies. There are some papers that have speculated that there are like what they call ionospheric clouds, and they haven't figured out what that would mean, but there maybe are regions that become more a higher frequency, and no one can figure out even what it means, because they need it to, because of the problem I'm bringing up. But that's obviously a reification fallacy, affirming the consequence, circular logic, begging the question, appeal to possibility, and on and on. But anyway, I guess the point I'm making is we've done these tests that completely comport with the plane Earth. It seemingly falsifies the assumption of a globe Earth, and the globe Earth idea would have the burden of proof, because what I experience is that the Earth is flat, and if I'm going to go fly a plane, if I don't treat the Earth like it's flat, I'm going to die, right? If I don't treat the Earth like it's flat and stationary, I'll die. I'll literally die. Everyone will die. So I have to treat it that way. The globe says, well, because of scale, yeah, it's so big that it's like it's flat. It's like it's stationary. Cool, maybe. Right? The point is, the default is that the Earth is flat. I've measured it. We build everything that way. We fly that way. We've seen far beyond the physical curve of the Earth. So the globe needs to prove it. And this is the problem. I'm curious what you think about this. First, they told us all, oh, we know the Earth's a globe because boats disappear over the curve of the Earth. Stupid flurf. All you got to do is go to the ocean or whatever, right? And we were told that in school, though. Like, Bill Nye told us that the boats go over the curve. Then we went out there and we looked at the boats and we made observations, and we saw, wait a minute, we're seeing things way too far. Hundreds and hundreds of miles. The boat's gone, but we can bring it back and stuff like that. So what they say is that, well, sure, the horizon we see is not the geometric horizon. It's just the apparent horizon. But because there's an atmosphere, it moves it around, and the curvature of the Earth is there. You just can never actually see it. And so that's an unfalsifiable, effectively religious claim. But my question would then be, it's like, if we can never see the curvature of the Earth, like the actual location of the curvature of the Earth. If we can never see it, then like how did anyone know it was there in the first place? You know what I'm saying?
So on that same model that I showed you, where I built the Earth with a flat spot on it, and I built the flat Earth as well. Now that's in millimeters, so a 6 millimeter tall person standing on that would be the same as a 6 foot tall person, essentially. And at that height on a flat Earth, you would actually see a curvature as you rise much sooner than you would see a curvature on a globe Earth. So on a globe Earth, on a flat Earth, if we're up above the flat Earth flying in a plane, why are we not seeing the outer edges curve any more than we would see them on a globe Earth? Either way, there's a curve out there, right?
No, I'm not sure exactly what you're saying. What do you mean, like a curvature?
So let's take a look at this model again here. So this is our flat Earth, and we're down here standing on the surface of our flat Earth.
Okay.
Okay. And I didn't mean to turn that black. I don't know why I did that. I got lost in the Earth. All right. So as we're standing on the surface of the Earth and we start to rise above it, we're going to start to see this curvature right here, even on a flat Earth. So why are we making an exception that curvature would even say that the Earth is a globe or not globe, when curvature should be present whether it's flat or round?
Okay, I mean, I can say that there's some truth to the idea that, like, based on the way that we see, if we had a radius of vision, like basically how far we can see, that it's possible that there would be some imposed apparent curvature to what we see in the distance, certainly when there's a radius of light. So radius of light, how far we see in the distance, and then the fact that it looks like visual space is actually curved, our eyes are curved, that's how we kind of seem to observe visual space, that you may occasionally see the illusion of curvature. Actually, the evidence suggests that people had to re-engineer robotics, very precise robotics in the last few years to use curved visual space learning models because they weren't working with the Euclidean perspective and Euclidean visual space, which is a major globe Earth problem, right? Because it's all built off the assumption that perspective is Euclidean, and then the curvature that we seem to interpret or experience in any way is automatically attributed to the curvature of the Earth. But I will say it's more so that the curvature of the Earth has to be a very specific thing. It has to be curving at a specific rate and blocking things in the distance. Now, this type of curvature is different, right? So the idea that my peripheral vision will curve around me and meet in the front, and I'll have a circle, like a radius, and I visualize things in visual space that's curved, that's different than like physical obstruction in front of me, creating a geometric physical horizon that's blocking things. And that is... it's really kind of simple. Like, if the Earth is a sphere with a radius of 3,959 miles, then the geometric horizon can be no further than 1.225 times the square root of the observer's height in feet. Yet, when we go out and test that, we have shown the horizon is over 10 times further than that. It would require the radius of a globe Earth be like over 250,000 miles. They claim it's under 4,000 miles. The horizon is an optical place. It's just apparent. It moves around because it's based on how far we can see, and it changes day to day based on the atmos. The horizon's apparent. It isn't physical. It's not geometric. That is actually a very precise refutation of the claim that the Earth is a sphere with that size. And then we go a step further and we shoot those high-frequency radio waves, high-frequency microwaves directly physically, right? A physical test, line of sight, goes far beyond where it should. Sure, you could appeal to the possibility that maybe they're completely wrong about the ionosphere and there's something else there, but technically at this point, it kind of becomes unfalsifiable. You know what I'm saying? Because I can always say that. I could say the Earth's a decahedron, and I could say, well, you know what I'm saying?
And I agree. It is unfalsifiable, and I also don't think either model can actually be proved.
Okay, I disagree, but I get that's your position. I mean, it makes more sense. I would say, like, I can kind of tell that maybe you've been pretty upfront about that being your position from the beginning, right? And that's cool. I appreciate the honesty. I disagree. I think that this place is very intuitive. The evidence kind of speaks for itself For example, like water lays flat. Now fluid, like water, is typically in the process of seeking equilibrium, right? So, but fluid statics is that water is level. If I had a bottle of water, look. Okay, like obviously this doesn't have much in it, right? But as I move it, it's always going to be flat. Like very simple. It's always going to try to seek its equilibrium and be level and or flat. If it was static, it'd be flat. We see large bodies of water on the Earth, right? I mean, the current model says it's 70%. I would say their percentage assumes dimensions, obviously. But what I'm saying is default is that water is going to seek its equilibrium just like a bathtub. Right? It needs to be contained. It's going to conform to its container. And when we look over large bodies of water, we see things super far away. We also see something called specular reflections. So you can see the mountains reflected like 1-to-1 in the water, right? And we have some of these that are like, say, 20 miles. So we're looking 20 miles, 30 miles. We see the mountains reflected on the lake or the body of water. Even the sun, we see a local reflection of the sun. The problem is that if the surface is curving even a little bit, if there's curvature, if there's concavity or convexity, it creates what's called a diffused reflection, which scatters the light. Because like it's like a clown house mirror, right? You know how you become all distorted is because the mirror is not flat. It's because it's curved. So when the light reflects off of that curved surface, it distorts it. It causes a diffused reflection. We see long distance specular reflections all over the Earth, which means that water that's showing the reflection of the mountain or whatever has to be flat. It can't be concave. It can't be convex. It causes a diffuse reflection. So like specular reflections refute the globe, and water lays flat. Fluid statics, I would say, actually does refute the globe as well. So like we have one side that matches all evidence, and then there's another side that causes us to like desperately cling to like unfalsifiable possibility. Flat Earth doesn't really have to do that. It matches all the evidence. The globe's been falsified based on what they said, right? I mean, do you kind of see where we're coming from? Like this is why Flat Earth is going nowhere, right? I just want to make sure that you get where we're coming from.
I don't think it is going anywhere. I do see where you're coming from, but I don't necessarily think that Flat Earth answers all the problems any more than Globe Earth does.
Have you ever? I won't keep you forever. I've been here for a couple hours. By the way, you said you're going to speak at Cape Canaveral.
Yes.
Nice, man.
Quantum.
Good.
Yeah, it's Quantum Summit 1776.com if anyone's interested in what it's about. But I'll be revealing 4 novel technologies and 2 of the use cases for those technologies. And I think regardless of whether you align with me at all on the shape of the Earth, I think everybody in the audience would probably love to see what it is I'm putting out, and it's very much in line with your community.
No, yeah, I find it very fascinating. And by the way, I'm not trying to like rush you off here. We can start to wrap it up, but I'm saying I live in Florida, so technically, depending on how everything goes, I might could even swing by there. I don't really know. I'm on the other side though. I'm on the other side near Tampa, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know how familiar you are with me, or maybe not. But on my channel, I show what I consider a very coherent model, quote unquote, and it's a torus field. And everything's a torus field. Everything's electric. Everything's magnetic. There is no exception. Everything's magnetoreactive. Everything's intrinsically dielectric. It's a conjugate geometry. You can't separate them. They're joined at the hip. There is an ether. You cannot have nothing. Something can't come from nothing. The vacuum isn't emptiness. Emptiness doesn't exist. There's a substantive fluid background. Everything comes from it. Basically, everything's ether modality. Everything's seeking equilibrium, trying to get back to the ether, to the initial inertial state of the ether. Everything we experience is that set out of equilibrium, basically. And then we have a torus field, and we have a vortex, and we've measured it with interferometry, and it increases with height. We have a giant vortex moving around us, and we're within this fractal reality where everything is fractal in the form of torus fields. Now, that is very coherent, and it matches all the evidence. It isn't, I'll say this, I don't think people are going to ever really welcome it in terms of materialism. or mainstream science, because that's a major problem, right? Like that's immediately showing the metaphysical is real. That's immediately showing, oh, the Earth is special and unique and like majestic if it's in the center, and people aren't comfortable with that. I think that we can probably see eye to eye on that part, which is that materialistic confinement has really limited the way that people have understood physics, right? Because it's like the ether can't be true because I can't touch it. It can't be outside of this physical world, and that's the problem that we're at right now.
Yeah, and so I agree with literally everything you just said. I think the only thing we're really in different camps on is what the shape of the Earth is, and I know obviously you're very much set in your belief or suspicion or what you think, what you know to be true. I would say that I don't know. So in that, I would quote Socrates that true wisdom is knowing that we know nothing, and I don't know.
No, that's cool, man. I mean, you know, I appreciate you coming on and being respectful, and I have a tendency to overload people. I'm not trying to do that. I'm sure you can see that flatters a lot, you know, like it flatters a lot, and we're so oftentimes misrepresented in straw men. Like these are not I saw your tweet. The reason that I thought it was cool is I trusted that you were being good faith, and I saw your tweet. I saw the tweet that you quoted, which was also good faith about flat Earth and the discussion and why would people get mad. And at the least, it causes people to think critically, and even if they're wrong, blah, 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 right? But what happened? But we are maybe the most marginalized group ever. I mean, if you're a flat earther, you can do whatever to them. And the truth of the matter is some of the strongest, smartest people I've ever met are like that. To be publicly a flat earther, you have to be very bold. You have to have like, it's no joke. And most people, I know many people that won't come out publicly about it because they'll just destroy their career. And so like I empathize with that. I get it, but it's not really how it's represented. It's like just a bunch of people in their mom's basement. That's not true. It's like, I know many PhD physicists, even astronomers. I mean, I like quantum physicists, you know, it doesn't matter that they have credentials. I'm just saying like it's all over the place. A lot of people are figuring out, PhD geophysicists came out. So I guess what I'm saying is it's time that the world see this conversation is much more nuanced and complex than people think. This isn't just a random group of people that watch a YouTube video. These are actually people that have read tons of papers, done tons of tests, done tons of observations, have been super censored, and have discovered that the model doesn't add up. What they told us doesn't add up, from basically the small to the big, pun intended. They lied to us about physics. And seemingly, I'll say this with my little rant here, and I want you to say whatever you would like to. I think that this is huge because by throwing out the ether, they've basically been able to separate interpretations of physics, and the military and other groups have been able to go over here, and really, I would say probably more sinister groups using the military research, right? And research and development have been able to properly apply a framework of physics that is more legit. And so now they have all this technology we don't even know about, we can't even understand. And then we're put over here in this like little children stay in your playpen physics where no one knows anything about the world. They're bumbling around and people think that light is two things at once and that there is no ether and that this place is insignificant and that virtual photons pop into existence from nothing or whatever. So you see, I think this is important. This is where it all started, you know, was MMX ether, threw it out because the Earth had to keep moving around the sun. And it's just not. I mean, it's maybe one of the biggest lies ever. So anyway, that's kind of my whole meta. That was a lot. So say whatever you want to, brother. If you have anything else you wanted to bring up before you get out of here, I don't want you to feel like I'm kind of bombarding you. I want to let you say whatever you want to.
Oh, I appreciate you being a cordial host and, you know, going back and forth with me. I don't think either of us were at any point angry with the other or yelling or any of that. So I'm sorry to disappoint the audience in that regard. But I do really appreciate what you're doing. And I think that any idea deserves respect and every idea deserves to be explored. And there is merit to the views of flat earthers in that most of the things that the mainstream academia has put out are absolutely false. Now, I suspect that's for much different reasons than most people. I could go into things that happen on an island and Renaissance technologies and things of that nature, but I don't want to get you kicked off of YouTube. But you're right, there is a breakaway technology civilization out there, and I'm well aware of it, and I'm going to try to do my best to put us all on the same level. So in that regard, much love to everybody listening, because I think you're all wonderful people. The fact that you're here and the fact that you're questioning our reality means you're already somebody that I like. So,
nice, bro. And I want to say, like I saw you earlier, you were like, I think they want to see us fight a little bit. I don't think so. I mean, there are probably some people that do, man, but you may be surprised. The audience is maybe more mature, than the more vocal ones. I guess sometimes the minority is the most vocal. I think that we have a lot to gain by talking to each other, learning from each other. And if your motivation, and I believe you actually, if your intention and motivation is what you're saying, which is basically to get the public's hands on some more accurate interpretations of physics or like technologies that could help us that are maybe being suppressed from us, then we're obviously on the same team, and I think that begins ideologically. And so, I encourage that endeavor. So, yeah, well, okay, you have any other final things that you want to say, brother?
No, I appreciate you, and thank you, Austin, for a great discussion.
Yeah, and make sure everyone knows for sure maybe where they can find you. I have your X in the description. And like I said, show respect to him even when it's on X. Don't act like you're on behalf of my channel talking reckless. Be respectful. He was incredibly respectful to us. But yeah, I have your X links, so if you want to maybe just kind of plug where people can keep up with you or see what you're doing in your upcoming event.
Yep. So my X or Twitter account is at PLR_2024. And I also have Twitters for Reaper Financial, Ascension Index, Atum Industries, ARC Institute, and Built on XRP. Those are some of my companies. And you can also find us in Telegram or any part of the XRP Ledger community. We're big over there. So I really appreciate everybody that just has questions. And if you're looking for that new financial system, that is exactly what I'm building in those companies. And I'm trying my best to save Americans and save the world from this debt slavery system that they are currently trapped in.
Wow, very interesting, man. I didn't even know all that. So that's very cool, man. I maybe we can stay in touch, and I obviously support all that in principle. So thank you for jumping on, my brother, and we'll stay in touch, man. Thanks for coming on and being so respectful.
Thanks, Austin.
Yep, later, brother. All right, what I'm gonna do, guys, is I'm going to play a song because I have to use the bathroom. So I'm gonna play. I'm gonna play this song. Let me just go ahead and do it.
Sign up, come on this with those who don't fit.
Okay, I'll be back in a second. All right, what's up? Sorry, I always do that. I drink too much before streams, then drink a lot during the streams. All right. Let me know if the mic is the mic working right. I think the mic's working good. All right, what's up, guys? Thanks for those who stuck around. We lost like a couple hundred, but whatever. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the conversation. Like I said, he was being respectful, and you just got to get the information out. You know what I'm saying? Great job tonight. What's it? It's not easy educating on the subject. Yeah, but it's all good. So I'll make this announcement real quick. So check this out. So we tried to create this whole different platform for the Misfits, and they told me that they were going to add a few features. It's really expensive. They were supposed to be adding these features, and I was constantly running into issues trying to make the community do what I wanted it to do, and they didn't add the features, and so I'm like, this is stupid. So just so everyone knows what I've been working on the last couple of days, and we'll have it done in the next day or so. When I say we, I mean me. Simply fantastic debate, Austin and Patrick. Thank you, Julia B. Thank you so much. So if you go to Ko-fi.com/whatsit, you are able to donate, like she just did, and you're also able to become a member, which is becoming a Miswit. And there are different tiers, like as low as $5 a month. Then you have water, fire, earth, air, ether. That makes you a Miswit. It's a monthly membership. On Ko-fi, we're going to start releasing like membership exclusive content. So that means that if you go to my Ko-fi and you're not a member, you won't even see it. But if you're a member, you'll see all kinds of different things, and there'll be specific things based on tier. So if you're a higher tier, you'll get more stuff than you do on the lower tier. But Miswits in general are going to get like access to exclusive sneak peeks. So say like if I record a new song, if I have a new video, if I have a new PowerPoint, whatever, I'll show some new discoveries, maybe an experiment. Private streams, so we'll have like hangout sessions that are private for just Misfits behind the scenes. So like if I go to NASA, I'll live stream with you guys. I'm going to talk to an astronaut. Y'all get exclusive behind the scenes access to see that kind of stuff before I release it to everyone. And in fact, some people have seen when I was at NASA the last time. It actually messed up right before I got to the astronaut. But anyway, I'm hoping that the audio sounds good. Can somebody give me like a 5 out of 5 if the audio is good? And obviously, let's keep it real, man. Like, all the content's free, right? Like, pretty much all my content's free. I'm just saying, like, exclusive membership. So, what else we're doing is building a Discord. And so, what's going to happen is if you become a member on Ko-fi, there's a Ko-fi bot that's automatically going to give you a Miswit role and add you to the server once you link your Discord. And so you'll get into the server and you'll have exclusive access and no one else has. Now, some people are already being added and stuff like that. It's not finished. The Discord's not finished, but the Discord's going to be really cool because obviously you have voice calls, you have exclusive chats, you'll have an exclusive calendar, an event calendar to see everything that's going on before other people know. I'll do behind the scenes streams in there and I'll record them, post them on Ko-fi, all this stuff, right? So you'll have an exclusive Misfit Discord membership. And then you'll have access to certain things based on your tiers. We'll have watch parties. So maybe we have a debate after show that's just for the Misfits, right? I'll do some like exclusive debate after show. So I'll do a debate. I'll come back and just hang out with the Misfits. We'll talk about it. Maybe even watch part of it if we wanted to. We'll just all discuss it. Stuff like that. So it's going to be really cool. And I plan on like adding all kinds of stuff to it. So there's that. So you'll have Ko-fi, you'll have Discord. As a Misfit, you get exclusive access to the exclusive content and the perks for both of those things. So that's what we're officially doing. Tried to go the other route, didn't work. But this way, at least you still get the benefit of, say, like a mobile application like Discord, obviously. Has many more years and much more resources behind it, so it's not going to be like the other one. So there's that. So that takes time to really build it and put all the features in it and make it look nice and have everything running smooth, but I've been working on that recently, and so that is going to be happening soon. So there you go. And obviously now we have the donations and the memberships all on the same page. I feel like I should move over or something. Like things right in front of me. All right. So there is. Let's do this. There's that announcement. I just wanted to let you guys know. And I'm going to check the donations. But yeah, you guys give me feedback. What do you guys think? I mean, you know, what can you do? What can you do? All right, let me go flip this over to the right. There we go. Give him the Discord for Skull and Globers. Oh, Earth Awakenings. Yeah, I can send it to him. Yeah, I'll take any Discord links. I mean, Earth Awakenings is where we do Skull and Globers. The Misfits thing, you'll get automatically exclusive access once you become a member on Ko-fi. There are obviously people still on the other platform. I'm going to keep paying for it until we can get everyone transitioned off of it. There are people on Patreon. I'm gonna put some of the exclusive stuff on Patreon. I'm gonna try to connect the bot from Discord to Patreon. I don't trust Patreon. They take more money, but it's more so about how I don't trust them. They've already censored some of my friends. But I do appreciate all the people that have been there. Certainly people that are OGs that have been there. But you can move your membership over to Ko-fi if you would like. If not, you'll still get access to certain exclusive things. And I'm going to try to create it where it'll throw you in the Discord as well. So there's that. If you're not familiar with Discord, I would consider getting it. You can still get a bunch of the other stuff without the Discord. The Discord's just going to be a pretty cool experience. So there's all that for the update so everyone knows. What is the other platform? Not sure what you're like. Ko-fi, ko-fi.com. It's just a platform that content creators can use. It's in the description. It's pinned at the chat. ko-fi.com. It's on the screen right there. What kind of math do they teach at Flurf School? You know what I've always found is that's really funny is like the people that are so like into math, they probably weren't good at math. You were probably one of those kids in class that had to like go over there and like help show them how to do the algebra homework so that we could finally get done with class and have some free time. Like, I just always find it so funny. Like if you're really proud of your ability to do some math, like that's not a sign of intellect. That's not the intellectual flex you think it is. Anyway, you know what math they taught at Flurf School? They taught us that the Earth is a sphere with a radius of 3,959 miles, and that would mean that the curvature of the Earth, also known as the physical, tangible, geometric horizon, should be at 1.225 times the square root of the observer's height in feet, roughly 7.98 inches per mile squared. The Earth must bend at a very consistent rate of convexity if that is, in fact, the shape of the Earth, and it doesn't do that. In Flurf School, they also teach the math of how if the Earth is actually a ball that's wobbling, 3 different wobbles on a 66.6 degree tilted axis, while the north and south Arctic circles are at 66.6 degrees as we spin 1,037 miles per hour east of the equator, revolving around the sun 66,600 miles per hour, while we fly through the galaxy at over 500,000 miles per hour, trailing the sun, as that galaxy then flies through space at over 1.2 million miles per hour, then interferometry measurements would precisely have detected those compounding vectors, and it did not do that. In fact, it shows a direct correlation with the periodicity of the sun and the moon, altitude and direction, thus falsifying the claim that it is because of the rotation of a sphere. So there's, yeah, that's the other math we learned in Flurf School. We learned what a radius value is. It's really profound. You should check it out. 1 times 1 equals 2. That's funny. All right, a lot of people are asking me to give me my take on that or to respond to it. I haven't figured out if I'm going to respond to all of it, but it's too much to talk about right now. I'm going to wrap this stream up. This is about this specific thing, so let me read the donations and we're going to wrap it up. Shout out to X Rumble Rockfin. All right, let's see what we got here. It's so weird, like, it's saying stuff was sent on the 28th, but it's the 27th, right? I'm kind of confused, I'm not gonna lie. All right. Shout out to all the new Miswits, by the way. I'll read some of them off really quick. And you guys may have already been Miswits and transferred over, but Don, T. Wayne, Zachary, Anthony, Free Thinking, Archer. Shout out to all you guys. Justin Johnson, thank you for the $25 tip, brother. Much love. Always supporting the channel. Greatly appreciated it, man. P. McGlover, I guess. Thank you. Peace, brother. Thank you so much for the support. No Globe Domo, thank you for the becoming a Miswit. Bronx Bombers 1302, thank you for still being a Miswit. Julia B, simply fantastic debate. Austin and Patrick, thank you so much. And shout out to him for being respectful. It's refreshing. I know that some people are like I'm talking more. I know I'm just trying to like get all the information out, and as I start to do it, I realize like, bro, it's so much. And you know that if you just cut it off quickly, then it'll be misrepresented and not understood. So it's like you have to say so much. It's totally not fair. Flat earthers should get like 2-to-1 time. I'm not even joking, because we have to explain like the globe position and what's wrong with it, and the flat earth position and the evidence and what it means, and then do a history lesson, and then do a physics lesson, and then conclude our point. Like that's like all the prerequisites for making a point as a flat earther. Globe earther just has to say, Michelson-Morley just proved the ether. Greg, thank you for explaining to my best friend what I am unable to explain to him. I'm so glad this conversation with Patrick happened. Much love, Witsit. Thank you for continuing to do what you do. I want to buy your ticket to the Quantum Summit in Cape Canaveral. Please come. Oh, I want to buy your ticket. Oh, wow. So you're Patrick's friend. That's super cool, man. That's very cool. Okay, yeah, dude. Message me on here. Message me on Ko-fi, and we'll talk about it. And if my schedule works out, I am interested in maybe doing it and checking it out. Could be cool. But that's very cool. Thank you for the support, man, for the tip. And that's cool that you were his friend, watched the stream, and then donated. That's very cool. If you guys don't know, he talked about how he has a good friend. That's Effie. He said that you should talk to him. Well, here we are. All right, cool. I think we are good. So, like I said, shout out to Greg, shout out to everyone that supported. Let me check Rockfin just to be safe here. Appreciate the calm discussion. Thanks, guys. Thank you, Hubble's Horror, for the $5 on Rockfin. All right, I think we're good. So, shout out to you guys on Rumble. I think we hit about 1,500. Cultivate clarity. Yeah, the bewildering numbers don't do it for me. Ballers love their billions and billions of mumbo jumbo. A billion minutes is 1,900 years. Nobody can even count to a billion. Great stuff, bro. Thank you, man. Yeah, well, what they'll say is like, oh, I'm a fourth, big numbers. I can't understand big numbers. Big numbers can't be true. It's like the fact you try to pretend like you can truly grasp like 5.88 trillion miles is a joke. And that's 1 light year. Now think about 5.88 trillion miles times 46 billion light years. Like, if you want to pretend that you understand and can grasp that, or even like the diameter, like, watch this. Let's do this. Circumference of the sun. 2.7 million mile circumference. So they say the Earth has a 24,901 mile circumference. They claim the Sun has a 2.720984 million mile circumference, almost 3 million miles. And to think that you can actually grasp 3 million miles when your experience is you go 50 miles to the next town, you go across the U.S. 3,000 miles, you go maybe 7,000 miles to another country, whatever. 3 million miles, bro. And we're talking about 5.88 trillion million, like 5.88 trillion miles times 46 billion. Yeah, so to just try to make fun of flat earthers by saying, oh, big numbers, my head hurts, big numbers, I can't understand them. Like, dude, you're just gaslighting. Be like, no, it's a fact that you can't grasp them either, right? Like, it doesn't mean it isn't true. That would be an appeal to incredulity to say, oh, look how big the number is, it can't be true. It's that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, so support those claims you can't. It's based simply on reifications of the model, conceptualizations that you assume and presuppose. No, it's fundamentally fallacious. So Anyway, I don't want to start getting into all kinds of rants. It's 11:30. I'm going to wrap this up. I'm actually going to try to do some stuff on Discord for a little bit. Then I want to get to sleep, be able to get up and work out early. So thank you guys for joining. Shout out to Patrick. Like I said, he was a good sport. And I like trying to set this new norm of having like respectful interaction and dialogue, even though sometimes when I feel like I'm starting to take someone's ball away, it feels awkward. And like, I don't mean that in any derogatory way to him or anything like that. Like, I'm a bit of an empath in a way, and so like I actually start to feel the other person's like uneasiness or awkwardness, and some of you might can pick up on that. I don't actually want to be cutthroat, and that's why when you hear me get into like the real like slice them up mentality, it's when the other people are being super disrespectful and they're like asking for it. But I don't think that's the way to be if we can avoid it. There's so much information that someone needs to be in a receptive state of mind to really understand the flat Earth position, to figure out what's really going on. And if they're in a combative mode or if people are fighting, like you can't even do anything at that point. Like you can't actually reach someone can't wake up. I hate that I couldn't get it off in time. I'm sorry. Well, hopefully no one messes with you because your number popped up on the screen. So, but okay. Guys, don't be lame. Leave the guy alone, man. But all right, I hate, just for just for future reference, don't donate technically personal information because it'll pop up on the screen. You can message me on that same platform, but all right. So I love you guys, man. I appreciate it. Did you notice the Iran Antarctica news lately with their president going missing? Well, I know that they said something about like they think they're entitled to parts of Antarctica and like basically threatening to get rid of the Antarctic Treaty. And then the Iranian president died, just like the Slovakian president said he's going to expose what happened the last few years. And then someone in his cabinet came out as a flat earther, and then he got shot 9 times in the street. I don't know what's going on. Some people automatically assume it's all slap. I mean, well, what if there actually was people in powerful places that were like, yo, let's tell everyone the Earth's actually flat? What would they do? Would they maybe shoot them in the street? I don't know. You come across as empath, it's obvious. Word. All right. Shout out to Sue. What's up, Sue? All right. I love you guys. Seek and speak truth unequivocally. Let me actually find what we got here. All right. We'll play in the field. All right, seek and speak truth unequivocally. Like I said, guys, pop in as a miswit. If you're on the other platforms, consider transferring over. Ko-fi.com/witsit. If you're not there, it's what better time to sign up? We're about to launch a brand new exclusive Discord. We're gonna have all kinds of exclusives on Ko-fi. It's gonna be dope. Definitely check that out. It's gonna be cool. Lots of like I said, private hangouts, watch parties, debate after shows that are exclusive for miswits. All kinds of cool stuff. I actually think it's gonna be very cool. You got questions, you got FE questions, you want to meet some of the OGs and kind of like the clique that'll know all the answers or point to the right places. Much easier to one-on-one. Reach out to me now. Message me on Ko-fi, probably not on Discord, because my Discord is like flooded with messages. But I'm trying to catch up to everyone, but Ko-fi's a good place to message. Okay. I love you guys. Seek and speak truth unequivocally. The weak find contentment in the consensus of ignorance. So who cares what other people think? They're always going to attack you, right? And that's kind of like to be expected. You should almost rejoice once you start to see that pattern. You should know, oh, well, if I'm getting closer to the truth, people are going to spiral and get extra and try to attack me and project their own intellectual ineptitudes and insecurities. Who cares, right? Like it is what it is. And also try to always stay humble. Like, I don't know everything about the Earth. I don't know what the Earth is. I just have been able to put together that we were clearly lied to. What they said is not the case. It's been falsified pretty definitively. And no, we should all come together to figure out what's really going on. So there's that. So yeah, much love. And remember, what's true is rarely popular, and what's popular is rarely true. Peace.
industry until the scripts get filled. Geopolitically, yeah, we in a field. That's for Israel. Wonder, is it real? Took the way you saw the world, then distorted it. Now you think you wanna rock that twirl somewhere orbiting. Theories disproportionate, the truth distorted quick with a forceful grip. They force them as simple that we absorbing quick. Took the people's signature that mean extorted it. They forging it. If news ain't cause informant to informing them there's a surplus, but they tell us there are shortages. Credit economy mortgages, dollar that's supported with empty fortresses. But what's important is this: we porting ships, important gifts. Of course it is, what extortion is in accordance with an assortment list of foreign tricks. We ignoring which informant this, informant this. It looked like we were snoring tricked. Pedophilia and the government endorsing it. Yeah, eugenics is exactly what abortion is. You just vilify those insubordinate. Way to matrix engineer, that's unfortunate. Geopolitically we in a field. That's for Israel. Wonder, is it real? Rappers actors say they high, say they sip with pills. Glorify suicide so they get the deals. Big pharma set it up just to flip the pills. Control the music industry until the scripts get filled. Geopolitically, yeah, we in a field. That's for Israel. Wonder, is it real?